Welcome, curious learners, to another deep dive. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that is, well, absolutely fundamental to cybersecurity, whether you're working on a small home network or navigating the complexities of a massive corporate enterprise. Our mission for this deep dive is to truly unpack the core principles of CISSP Chapter 13, Managing Identity and Authentication. This isn't just about setting up usernames and passwords, it's about establishing a deep sense of trust in the digital world, ensuring the right people have precisely the right access, and understanding the core principles that protect all our valuable digital assets. Get ready for some aha moments because truly grasping identity and authentication is key to being well informed in cybersecurity. So let's start at the very beginning. We're going to kick things off by exploring identity and access management, or IAM, pronounced IAM. Now, for those familiar with the CISP, pronounced SSP certification, this is domain 5.0, and I mean, on the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward. But what exactly does IAM really encompass beyond just a simple login screen?
That's a perfect starting point, actually, because IAM is far more comprehensive than just logging in. At its heart, it's about meticulously granting and revoking privileges to access data or perform actions on systems. Think of it like having a highly effective team for your digital resources. You've got, say, a meticulous doorman who checks credentials,
Okay.
a strict bouncer who enforces the rules, and maybe a detailed accountant who records everything that happens. The core functions, they really revolve around identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting. It's the complete life cycle determining who can get in, what they can do once they're inside, and critically keeping a thorough record of it all.
Oh.
To maybe expand on that analogy a bit, imagine a highly secure multi-story building. IAM is the entire system controlling access. It decides who gets a key card. It's their identification, their unique claim of who they are.
Right, the claim.
Then it verifies if their key card is valid and maybe matches their biometric data, perhaps their face scan that's authentication, proving their identity.
The proof.
Exactly. Once they're inside, the system tells the security guards which specific rooms or floors they're allowed into, based on their job role. That's authorization.
What they can do.
And finally, every time they badge in or out, every door they open, every time they use an elevator, a log is kept that's accounting. Truly a holistic approach to managing digital trust.
That building analogy really clarifies it. Okay, so once we understand the who, the next logical step is defining the what. What exactly are these assets we're constantly trying to protect? When I hear assets, my mind usually goes straight to, physical equipment, servers, and things.
That's a great question, and it highlights a common misconception. Assets in cybersecurity aren't just physical servers or hardware. They're truly anything of value within an organization that requires protection. It's a much broader definition, you see. Our understanding breaks it down into several key types. First, and perhaps most crucially, there's information. This is your data in all its forms. It could be simple digital files on a computer, complex databases storing critical business intelligence, or even traditional paper records in a physical filing cabinet.
Ah, even paper.
Absolutely. Think of sensitive customer lists, confidential company emails, proprietary research data, or your intellectual property. Protecting this is paramount because it's about preventing unauthorized eyes from ever seeing it. Then we have systems. These are the IT infrastructures that provide services and, well, make everything run. This includes things like a file server storing user documents, a powerful database server holding all your critical records, or a web server that powers an e-commerce website for online shopping. Controlling access here means ensuring only authorized programs or users can interact with these critical machines, or that they can only perform specific allowed actions.
Okay, makes sense.
Next, we protect devices. This refers to any computing equipment regardless of its size or function. This could be network infrastructure like routers and switches, large storage devices like SAMs, storage area networks, pronounced SAN, or NAS, network attached storage, pronounced NAS, personal computing devices like laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones.
Pretty much everything with a chip.
Pretty much, yeah. Even peripherals like network printers or scanners. So an employee's laptop, the network printer in the office, or the smartphone they use to access company resources are all vital assets. Moving to the physical realm, we also consider facilities as assets. These are physical locations, ranging from individual secure rooms like server rooms or data centers, to entire office buildings or even whole corporate campuses. Protecting these physical spaces is paramount because that's often where your other critical assets, your systems, devices, and even paper information physically reside.
Right, protect the container too.
Exactly. Applications are also distinct assets. These are the software programs that provide specific functionalities to users. Examples include large-scale ERP, enterprise resource planning, pronounced ERP, systems that manage core business processes, CRM, customer relationship management, pronounced CRM, tools for sales and marketing teams, or even a simple word processing application that processes sensitive documents. And finally, we protect services. These are the offerings provided by an organization. This could be the ability to print documents on a network printer, the availability of network capacity for users to connect to the internet, or even end-user technical support provided by the IT help desk. Access control systems ensure that only authorized individuals or devices can utilize these valuable services. So as you can see, assets truly covers the entire spectrum of valuable organizational resources.
Wow, okay, that's a much broader scope for assets than I initially thought. So we know what we're protecting. This naturally leads us to how we protect them, controlling physical and logical access. How do these two types of controls work together? Do they overlap, or are they completely separate lines of defense?
They are absolutely two sides of the same coin, and they're crucial for building a truly layered defense. You really need both for comprehensive security. They complement each other, they're not separate at all. Physical security controls are the tangible measures you can literally touch. Their purpose is to prevent unauthorized physical access to assets and to control the environment around them. Think of, the robust fences surrounding a data center, locked gates, security guards patrolling, or turnstiles at building entrances. They also encompass environmental controls like HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems to prevent servers from overheating,
Right, the temperature stuff.
and sophisticated fire suppression systems to protect equipment from fire damage. A very straightforward example. Placing critical servers in a dedicated, locked server room that requires a keycard or a cipher lock to enter, or securing desktop computers to desk to prevent theft. These are visible, tangible barriers. In contrast, logical access controls are the technical, software-based measures. They prevent unauthorized access to data and configurations within systems, devices, and applications. These controls include the core mechanisms for authentication, verifying identity, authorization, determining what you're allowed to do, and setting specific granular permissions.
So the digital locks.
Precisely. For example, requiring a username and password to log onto a computer, or configuring specific user group permissions to restrict who can read, modify, or delete a critical file on a shared network drive. These controls apply whether the resource is on-site or, nestled deep in the cloud. They are the digital locks on your digital data.
Right.
So you might have a locked server room, physical control, and then passwords and permissions on the servers inside that room, logical controls. They absolutely work in tandem.
That makes perfect sense. It's like having a locked door, which is your physical control, and then a password for the computer inside the room, your logical control. Okay, and speaking of foundational concepts, this really leads us right into the heart of cybersecurity. The CIA, pronounced CII, triad. For anyone new to cybersecurity, what exactly is the CIA triad? It sounds almost like a secret agent organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does have that ring to it. But it's much more fundamental, though maybe equally important for security pros. The CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, is truly the bedrock of information security. It represents the three primary goals of any robust security program. Honestly, if you only remember one thing about security, the CIA triad should probably be it. Confidentiality is all about ensuring that only authorized subjects can access data or systems. It's about keeping secrets safe and private. If sensitive data is accessed by someone who shouldn't see it, maybe a competitor or just an unauthorized employee, that's a loss of confidentiality. We often call that a data breach.
Right, the breach.
Imagine a sealed envelope containing a private letter. Only the intended recipient, or someone explicitly authorized by them, should be able to open and read that letter. Strong authentication mechanisms and encryption are designed specifically to enforce confidentiality. Integrity guarantees that data or system configurations are not modified, altered, or destroyed without proper authorization. It's about accuracy, trustworthiness, preventing tampering. If someone surreptitiously changes the letter inside our envelope without permission, its integrity is lost. You can no longer trust that the content is accurate or original.
So it hasn't been messed with.
Exactly. Access controls play a vital role here by restricting who can modify information and by providing mechanisms to detect any unauthorized changes. And finally, availability. This means that authorized users, systems, and data are accessible and usable exactly when needed. If a critical system is down, or if essential data is inaccessible to those who rely on it, then availability is lost. In our analogy, if you can't open the envelope to read the letter because it's stuck or the key is lost, then its availability is compromised.
You need to be able to get to it.
You do. Proper access management helps ensure systems are available to authorized users by preventing unauthorized users from disrupting services.
Yeah.
So access controls are implemented directly to protect these three pillars. Authentication ensures confidentiality, authorization maintains integrity, and proper management helps ensure availability. They are deeply, deeply interconnected.
Building on that CIA triad, which is clearly so central, we then come to the AAA model, pronounced AAA. We've sort of touched on parts of this already, but let's break down each component: authentication, authorization, and accounting. How do they flow together in practice?
Absolutely. The AAA model is really the operational core of how access management systems function. It provides a logical sequence of events for secure interactions. First, we have authentication. This is about confirming the identity of a user, a system, or even another service. It's answering that fundamental question, are you truly who you claim to be?
Like the bouncer checking ID.
Exactly like the bouncer at an exclusive club. Before you even get close to the entrance, they check your ID to make sure you are indeed the person named on the guest list, or that you're old enough to enter. It's the critical verification step. Once you're successfully authenticated, you move to authorization. This determines exactly what actions that now verified entity is permitted to perform or what resources they can access. It's answering, okay, you're in, but what exactly are you allowed to do?
The permissions.
Right. So after the bouncer confirms your identity, they might tell you which areas of the club you have access to, maybe just the main dance floor, or if you're on the VIP list, you can enter the exclusive lounge. It's the permission step, enforcing the principle of least privilege. Finally, we have accounting. This is about tracking and meticulously recording all actions attempted or performed by authenticated entities, creating a detailed audit trail. It's answering, what did you do while you were here and when? The logs, exactly. Every time you order a drink at the bar, try to enter a new section of the club, or even attempt to open a door you're not allowed through, a record is kept. This record is invaluable for later review, whether for troubleshooting, compliance audits, or investigating security incidents. And a critical insight here, which the model underscores, is that true accountability hinges entirely on effective identification and authentication. If you can't confidently know who someone is, or if you can't verify their claimed identity beyond doubt, then you simply cannot hold them accountable for their actions later. The whole system of trust breaks down without those first two crucial steps.
So it really is a logical progression. First, prove identity, then get permissions, then meticulously log actions. Okay, and that brings us to identification and authentication strategy. How exactly do identification and authentication differ, and why is this a two-step process? They sound so similar they could almost be interchangeable in casual conversation.
It's a subtle but vital distinction, and yeah, understanding it is foundational. They are distinct, yet intrinsically intertwined. Identification is the act of a subject claiming an identity. It's simply stating, my name is John Doe, or I am this user account. When you sit down at a computer and type in your username, for instance, john.doe@cybex.com, you are performing the act of identification. You are presenting an identity to the system.
Just saying who you are.
Just saying who you are. Authentication, on the other hand, is the rigorous process of proving that claimed identity. It's verifying, yes, you are indeed John Doe. This is where you provide the evidence. You might enter a password, swipe a smart card, present a fingerprint, or even scan your face. It's the corroboration you provide to back up your initial claim. This is a critical two-step process because without both, security is severely compromised. If a system only performed identification and accepted a username without requiring proof, anyone could type in john.doe@cybex.com and instantly impersonate that user without any verification whatsoever.
Right, that'd be bad.
Very bad. Every subject, every user, every device, every service must first present a unique identity, and then that identity must be robustly proven. Think of it like this.
Yeah.
When you go to a bank, you first state your name to the teller, that's identification. Then you present your photo ID and perhaps answer some security questions to prove you are who you claim to be, that's authentication. Without both, the bank couldn't confidently provide you with service.
That distinction simplifies it perfectly. Okay, now let's move to another pair of fundamental terms: subjects and objects. These sound quite abstract, almost philosophical, but they're absolutely core to how access control models are built, right?
Absolutely right. While they might sound academic, these are critical concepts for truly grasping the mechanics of access controls and how permissions actually function within systems. It's how we define the interaction. A subject is the active entity that accesses a resource or performs an action. Subjects are always the initiators of requests. Most commonly, subjects are human users logging into a system.
Like me using my computer.
Exactly. However, they can also be non-human entities. A program running on a server that needs to access a database, an automated service performing a task, or even an entire system that needs to communicate with another system's resources. In our secure building analogy, the subject is the person trying to enter a room, or perhaps an automated cleaning robot actively moving through the halls, the active part. An object, in contrast, is the passive entity that provides information or a resource. Objects are what subjects act upon. They are the targets of actions.
The thing being accessed.
Precisely. Examples include a file on a server, a specific record within a database, a running program, a process, a service being offered, a printer, or even storage media. Following our building analogy, the object is the room itself that you want to enter, the file cabinet you want to open, or the printer you want to use. The key interaction is that the subject is always the active entity that requests or receives information or data, while the object is the passive entity that provides or hosts it. It's important to note that sometimes roles might appear to switch depending on the context of the interaction, but the fundamental active-passive distinction remains.
How so? Can you give an example?
Sure. Like when you use a web browser subject to retrieve a web page object from a web server, you're initiating the request. But then that web application, which was an object in that interaction, might then become a subject when it sends dynamic web pages back to you, which your browser, now acting as a subject, receives.
Ah, okay. It depends on the direction of the action.
Exactly. But a simpler way to think about it is always, a subject accesses an object. That distinction is crucial for defining and enforcing granular access permissions and understanding how unauthorized access could potentially occur.
So we've identified who's who and what's what. The next logical step is registration, proofing, and establishment of identity. This seems like the very first step in bringing someone into a system, even before they can think about authenticating. What does this comprehensive process involve?
This is truly the birth certificate phase for a digital identity within an organization. It's about rigorously verifying who someone is before granting them any access to sensitive resources. The process is much more involved than simply taking someone at their word. Our sources use a great real-world example, hiring a new employee. First, during the initial hiring process, acceptable documentation is absolutely required. This isn't just a quick glance. It's a thorough check of official physical proof like a passport, a driver's license, or a birth certificate. This verifies their legal identity and ensures they are who they claim to be in the physical world. Got it. Real-world proof first.
Right. Second, the Human Resources HR department plays a critical central role. They verify these documents, initiate the formal registration process within the organization, and begin creating the employee's initial digital account and setting up their first password. Third, the organization might then move to more secure or advanced methods to complete the identity establishment. This could involve collecting biometric data, such as an employee's fingerprint, which is then stored for future authentication. Or it might involve using knowledge-based authentication, often referred to as KBA, pronounced KBA.
KBA, those are the security questions, Brett.
They are. KBA typically involves asking users multiple choice or fill-in-the-blank questions that, in theory, only they should know. We've all seen these. Which of the following vehicles have you recently purchased? What is your mother's maiden name? Or what is the color of your first car? These are sometimes called cognitive passwords when used for things like self-service password recovery. Okay, KBA sounds incredibly convenient for users, letting them reset their own passwords. But honestly, given how much of our lives are on social media, aren't these questions just too easy for an attacker to research? Is there a hidden danger here that makes this less convenient and more risky than it appears?
You've hit on a significant and often overlooked vulnerability, and it's a critical point our sources emphasize. While KBA or cognitive passwords seem helpful for self-service password resets, they are often surprisingly weak. The information required to answer these secret questions is increasingly available publicly, especially through social media profiles, public records, or other forms of open-source intelligence.
Yeah, I can see that. My first car color, probably findable.
Exactly. An attacker dedicated to compromising an account can often research and find the answers to impersonate someone without even directly interacting with them. This is precisely why the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, pronounced NIST, specifically in their SP 863B Digital Identity Guidelines, Authentication and lifecycle management actually discourages the use of these static security questions for federal agencies because of these inherent vulnerabilities.
So NIST says avoid them.
They discourage them, yeah. It's a classic example of a seemingly helpful feature unintentionally creating a significant security hole. What feels convenient can, in fact, be a serious weakness.
That's a huge aha moment right there.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense how easily those questions could be compromised. Okay, so if KBA has those risks, let's dive into the various ways we truly prove identity using authentication factors. Our sources break them down into something you know, something you have, and something you are. Let's start with the most common one, something you know.
This is indeed the most common authentication factor, often referred to as a type 1 factor, and it relies on memorized secrets. The primary example here is passwords, the string of characters you type to gain access. Closely related are passphrases, which are unique strings of characters, often significantly longer and potentially easier for users to remember than complex passwords, like, say, I learned my CISSP certification.
Longer, but maybe easier to recall.
Right. While longer, they can paradoxically be easier to recall for users, yet significantly harder for attackers to crack using brute force methods. And then there are personal identification numbers, or PINs, pronounced pins, typically shorter sequences of 4, 6, or 8 numbers, commonly used with bank cards or smart cards. However, our sources highlight several significant weaknesses of passwords, which is precisely why they are often considered the weakest single form of authentication.
What are the main pitfalls?
Well, several. Users frequently choose passwords that are easy to remember, which unfortunately makes them equally easy for attackers to guess or crack using dictionary attacks.
Like password 123.
Yep. Exactly. Conversely, randomly generated, highly complex passwords are hard to remember, leading users to write them down on sticky notes or store them in insecure locations, which completely defeats their security purpose. Users often share their passwords with colleagues, or simply forget them, leading to increased help desk calls and potential security risks. Attackers have multiple avenues to detect passwords, including direct observation, shoulder surfing, sniffing networks for clear text transmissions, less common now but still a risk, or by stealing entire password databases. Sometimes password databases themselves can become publicly accessible after a breach. And finally, passwords are highly vulnerable to specific attacks like brute force, dictionary attacks, and password spraying. To combat these inherent weaknesses and strengthen something you know, organizations implement various password policy components. Maximum age. This requires users to change their passwords periodically, say every 45 or 90 days. Password expiration. Password complexity. This forces users to include different character types, lowercase, uppercase, numbers, special characters. Makes them harder to guess. Password length. Sets a minimum number of characters, like at least 8. Longer is generally better. The source notes passphrases up to 64 characters are good. Minimum age. Prevents users from immediately changing their password back to their old one after a forced expiration. Password history. Prevents reusing recent passwords, remembering maybe the last 4 or more. Now, when it comes to authoritative recommendations, there's a fascinating nuanced discussion that challenges some long-held beliefs, especially from NIST.
Oh, what does NIST say now?
Well, NIST SP 863B, the Digital Identity Guidelines, actually recommends passwords should always be hashed, never stored in clear text, obviously, but perhaps surprisingly, they suggest passwords should not expire for typical users unless there's a clear sign of compromise.
Really? No expiration, that's different.
It is. The thinking is frequent changes often lead users to pick simpler, more predictable passwords, ironically weakening security. NIST also suggests passwords should not require special characters unless the user chooses them. Users should be able to copy-paste and allow all characters for flexibility. They still recommend a minimum length of 8, up to 64 for passphrases. In contrast, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI-DSS, pronounced PCI-DSS version 4.0 for handling credit card data, still requires passwords to expire every 90 days, be at least 12 characters long, contain numeric and alphabetic characters, and not be the same as the previous 4.
So different standards for different contexts.
Exactly. It shows there isn't a single universal rule, and it depends on the industry, risk, and compliance needs.
That's far more nuanced to passwords than most people realize. Okay. So if something you know has so many pitfalls, what about something you have? Type 2 authentication, the physical thing.
Right, type 2. This factor introduces a physical element into authentication, making it inherently stronger. The underlying principle is simple. If you don't physically possess the object, you can't authenticate. One common example is smart cards. These are those credit card-sized IDs or badges with a tiny integrated circuit chip embedded. They securely store authentication info, often used with PKI, public key infrastructure, pronounced PKI, for encryption and digital signing. They're designed to be tamper-resistant.
But you usually need a PN with them, right?
Often, yes. Smart cards alone aren't always the full picture. Most robust implementations combine a smart card, something you have, with a PIN, something you know, creating a powerful form of multi-factor authentication. You need both the card and the secret. Then we have hardware tokens. These are small, dedicated devices that generate a one-time password, OTP, pronounced OTP. Our source shows an image, figure 13.1, of a typical hardware authenticator, maybe like those from RSA, pronounced RSA. It looks like a small key fob with a constantly changing 6 to 8-digit number displayed. The server knows what number should be shown based on an algorithm.
I've seen those. The number changes every minute or so.
Exactly. And increasingly common, reflecting the shift to mobile, are software authenticators. These are apps running on smartphones or computers that generate OTPs. A prime example shown in Figure 13.2 is Google Authenticator. It generates codes for various online accounts right in the app. Within OTPs, there are two main types to understand. Time-based one-time passwords, TOTP, pronounced TOTP. These are generated based on a shared secret key and synchronized clocks between the app and the server. A new OTP typically pops up every 30 or 60 seconds and is only valid for that short window. Hash-based one-time passwords, HOTP, pronounced HOTP. These use an HMSC, hash-based message authentication code, pronounced AIC, MAC-based algorithm, and don't rely on a synchronized clock. Instead, the user often clicks a button to generate the next OTP, and that code stays valid until it's used once. Event-based, not time-based. A key risk with hardware tokens, though, is their physical nature. They can fail. Battery dies, device breaks, gets lost, and then you're locked out. Potentially, yes. That can lead to availability issues. It's that constant balance between security, usability, and reliability.
So a physical item or a digital code that updates frequently makes sense. Now, for something you are, type 3 authentication, biometrics. This still feels the most futuristic, but it's clearly becoming commonplace with our phones and laptops. How does it actually work, and what are the different types?
It definitely is common, and it's incredibly powerful because it relies on something unique to you,
Right.
your own body. Biometrics use unique physical or behavioral characteristics of a person for either identification or authentication. Hard to forget or lose your own finger, right? Biometrics can be used in two key ways. One-to-one match, authentication. When you use a biometric like your fingerprint to unlock your phone, it's typically a one-to-one match. The system compares your live scan to a stored reference profile specifically associated with your user ID, claiming identity, proving it with your unique attribute. One-to-many search, identification. Biometrics can also be used for identification, which is a broader search. For example, law enforcement might use facial recognition to search a large database to identify an unknown person from security footage. That's a one-to-many search to figure out who someone is. Let's look at the types. Physiological biometrics are based on static physical characteristics. Fingerprints, those unique patterns of loops, whorls, ridges, and minutiae. Readers capture these. Very common now. Face scans, using geometric patterns of faces, used on smartphones, border control, etc. Retina scans, focus on the unique blood vessel patterns at the back of the eye. Highly accurate, but often requires close contact, which can feel a bit intrusive. Iris scans, focus on the unique colored area around the pupil. Highly unique, can be scanned from a distance, less intrusive than a retina, but glasses or contacts can sometimes interfere. Palm scans, use near-infrared light to scan vein patterns in the palm. Also quite unique. Then there are behavioral biometrics, based on dynamic learned characteristics or patterns. Voice pattern recognition, voice print, relies on the unique characteristics of how you speak, your pitch, cadence, tone. It's crucial to distinguish this from speech recognition, which understands what you say. Voice print identifies who is speaking. Other examples could be typing rhythm or how you walk. Now, it's vital to understand that no biometric system is perfect. None. And we have specific ways to measure their accuracy, which is crucial for deployment. False rejection rate, FRR, pronounced FRR. This happens when the system fails to authenticate a valid authorized user. It's a type 1 error. Your fingerprint doesn't work on your phone, even though it's you. Falsely rejected.
Annoying, but maybe less dangerous.
Generally, yes. More dangerous is the false acceptance rate, FAR. Pronounced FAR. This is when the system incorrectly authenticates someone who is not the valid user. A type 2 error. Someone else's fingerprint unlocks your phone. That's bad.
Very bad.
Very bad. And the key metric tying these together is the crossover error rate, CER, pronounced CEIR. This is the point where the FR and FFA percentages are equal. A lower CER indicates a more accurate biometric device overall, representing the best balance between letting the right people in and keeping the wrong people out. Our sources include a graph, Figure 13.3, showing how these rates cross the CER is at that intersection. Lower is definitely better.
So a low CER means that the device is good, but you mentioned you can adjust sensitivity, right? Like make it super strict or a bit more forgiving. Feels like there's a trade-off there.
Exactly. You've nailed that inherent trade-off. You can absolutely tune a biometric device's sensitivity. If you set it very high, it might lead to more FRR false rejections, is less likely to let the wrong person in, but it might also falsely reject you more often, which can be frustrating.
Yeah.
Conversely, lower the sensitivity. You might get fewer FRR but more FR false acceptances, meaning it's more likely to let an unauthorized person through. Often, organizations aim for a balance, but in very high security areas, data centers, government facilities, you typically prefer more false rejections over even a single false acceptance. Prioritize security over convenience.
That sensitivity adjustment is a really practical consideration. Okay, beyond these three main factors, know, have, are, what about other attributes for additional authentication, like somewhere you are and somewhere you aren't? These sound a bit abstract, and location-based stuff has definitely popped up more recently.
They might sound abstract, but these factors are highly practical and increasingly vital in modern security, adding another layer of verification beyond just the user's identity. They leverage context, specifically location. Somewhere you are identifies a subject's location. This can be determined using their IP, Internet Protocol, address, maybe their phone number via caller ID, or a precise physical location using geolocation, IAM, pronounced IAM. Systems use this to spot suspicious activity.
Like logging in from a weird place.
Exactly. If you typically log in from New York, and suddenly there's a login attempt for your account from an IP address in, say, Russia, the system might flag that as suspicious, block the access, or require additional stronger authentication like sending a code to your registered phone. It flags unusual behavior. Somewhere you aren't is more aggressive control. It's designed to prevent simultaneous logins from wildly different locations, which is a strong indicator of potential account compromise. It actively blocks access if a user tries to log on with the same account from a new IP address while they are still logged in from a previous IP.
Because you can't be in two places at once.
Physically, no. Imagine you log into your online banking from home in California. Immediately after, someone tries to log in with your credentials from Florida. The system might block that second attempt based on this somewhere you aren't rule. Now, our sources point out it's not foolproof. A savvy attacker might use a VPN, virtual private network, pronounced VPN, to mask their location.
Ah, right.
But it still adds a significant layer of difficulty. These concepts feed directly into context-aware authentication. This isn't just one factor. It combines multiple attributes, location, time of day, the specific device being used to identify users, especially mobile users. MDM, mobile device management, pronounced MDM systems, use this a lot. Your banking app might ask for extra verification if you log in from a new city on a device it doesn't recognize.
Makes sense. More context, better security.
Exactly. Modern smartphones even have examples of context-aware gesture-based authentication, like Microsoft Windows 11 allowing picture passwords where you swipe across a picture, or Android Lock letting you swipe patterns on grid. They layer context onto existing methods.
That's pretty clever, using more than just a single piece of information. Really ups the security game. This naturally leads us right into multi-factor authentication, or MFA, pronounced MFA. This feels like a huge one, almost the industry standard now, and I know our sources have a very strong point to make here.
This is huge, absolutely one of the most critical and widely recommended security controls today. MFA, or 2FA, two-factor authentication, when specifically using two factors, requires a user to provide two or more authentication factors from different categories to prove their identity. The crucial distinction here, and a common misunderstanding, is that simply using a password, something you know, and a PN, which is also something you know, is not MFA.
Because they're the same type of factor.
Exactly. Both fall into the something you know category. For true MFA, you need factors from different categories. For example, using a smart card, something you have, combined with a PIN, something you know, is MFA. You need the physical card and the secret code. That combination provides the layered security. The security benefit of MFA is immense. It really can't be overstated. It significantly increases security because an attacker would need to bypass multiple, fundamentally different attack methods simultaneously. If you use a password, a token, and a biometric, an attacker needs to steal the password and get the physical token and spoof your fingerprint all at once. Much, much harder. Now, a very important note from our sources, highly relevant given its widespread use. NIST has actually deprecated, meaning officially discouraged the use of SMS, short vested service, for 2FA for federal agencies.
Wait, really? SMS codes? But everyone uses those. That's surprising. What are the specific vulnerabilities that led NIST to discourage it?
It is surprising given how common it is, which makes this even more impactful. The sources outline several key vulnerabilities. Attackers can intercept SMS messages via SIM, subscriber identity module, pronounced SIM, card fraud. That's where an attacker tricks the mobile operator into porting your phone number to a SIM card they control.
SIM swapping. I've heard of that.
Exactly. Once they control the number, any SMS verification code sent to you goes straight to them instead. Another simpler vulnerability is just physical thefts of the smartphone. An attacker steals your phone, they might be able to read the OTP, one-time password, right from the lock screen notifications, even without unlocking the phone fully.
Ah, okay, so it's not as secure as we might think.
Compared to other methods, no. So while SMS-based 2FA is convenient, it's now considered a weaker link due to these interception and bypass methods. It's a reminder that convenience doesn't always equal strong security.
That's a truly critical detail, especially with so many services still relying on SMS. So if SMS isn't ideal, what's the cutting edge, maybe the future of authentication? Our sources point to passwordless authentication.
Passwordless authentication is definitely a rapidly growing and exciting trend, driven by those inherent weaknesses of static passwords we discussed. The core idea is to move beyond needing to type or even remember a traditional password, which is so often the weakest link.
How does it work in practice?
Well, instead of a password, you use alternative, stronger methods. This primarily involves leveraging biometrics built into your device, facial recognition, fingerprint scans. Or it might use dedicated hardware devices specifically for authentication, often called passkeys. So imagine just looking at your phone, touching a sensor, or plugging in a small USB universal serial bus device, and boom, you're authenticated. No password typing needed. The Fast Identity Online, from FIDO Alliance, is a major player here. It's an open industry association promoting and developing open standards for passwordless authentication frameworks. Their goal: reduce the world's reliance on passwords, make online authentication simpler for users, and significantly more secure against attacks like phishing.
And those hardware passkeys.
Right. An excellent example mentioned in our sources is the YubiKey device, shown in figure 13.4. It's a small, physical security key, usually plugs into a USB port. When you need to authenticate, instead of typing a password, you might just touch the YubiKey. It provides a cryptographic proof of your identity, often without any further interaction. It's a tangible something you have, replacing something you know.
That's a huge shift in thinking. Okay, moving on from authenticating individual users, our sources also discuss device authentication and service authentication. How do these differ from user authentication, and why are they just as important?
These are absolutely crucial for a robust security posture. They're about verifying non-human entities, the machines and processes themselves, which are equally critical in a complex network. Device authentication is about verifying that a specific device, laptop, phone, server, network appliance, is trusted and known to the network before it's allowed to connect or access resources, proving the device's identity.
How do you fingerprint a device?
Good question. One common method is device fingerprinting. This involves capturing a unique set of attributes from a device during its initial registration or first connection. Things like its operating system, web browser version, installed fonts, screen resolution, cookie settings, HTTP hypertext transfer protocol, pronounced HTTP headers.
All those little details.
Exactly. They collectively form a unique fingerprint. When the user logs on later, the system checks that the device's current characteristics match its registered fingerprint. A big mismatch. Might be suspicious. MDM, Mobile Device Management, pronounced MDM systems, and Network Access Control, NAC, pronounced NAC systems, use this extensively. NAC systems can perform a posture assessment checking if the device meets security requirements like updated antivirus before allowing network access. Another key standard is 802.1x. This is for port-based authentication on switches and routers. It forces users or devices to authenticate to a central server before getting any network access at all. No authentication via 802.1x, no network access. Simple as that. Service authentication is about authenticating services or applications themselves. These background processes need their own credentials to access resources, databases, etc. This often uses dedicated service accounts. For example, Microsoft Exchange Server might use a service account to talk to a database, or a SQL structured query language, pronounced SQL server, might use an account like, say, System Administrator for its internal functions.
And these accounts are usually quite powerful.
Typically, yes. They often have live privileges. Best practices dictate strong, complex, expiring passwords, regular access reviews, and ideally non-interactive logon methods to reduce risk. They can also use certificate-based authentication for more secure access, using digital certificates from a CA, Certificate Authority, pronounced CI. Think of an automated vacuum cleaner needing its own account to access Wi-Fi and the floor plan separate from the homeowner's account. And building on both, a critical concept is mutual authentication. This is where both the client and the server authenticate each other, not just you proving who you are to the server, but the server proving its identity back to you.
Why is that important?
Prevents man-in-the-middle attacks or connecting to rogue servers. A common example is connecting via VPN, virtual private network, pronounced VPN. Both your device, client, and the VPN server present digital certificates. If either side fails authentication, maybe the server certificate looks dodgy, the connection won't start. Critically prevents you from revealing credentials to a fake server.
We've covered a lot on individual, device, and service authentication. Now let's zoom out. How is identity management implemented across an entire organization? Our sources mention centralized and decentralized access control. What are the pros and cons here?
These are two fundamental architectural approaches, each with distinct trade-offs. Organizations choose based on scale, complexity, risk tolerance. Centralized access control means a single, authoritative entity or system performs all authorization verification for the whole organization. A classic example, a single Microsoft Active Directory, pronounced AD, domain controlling all user accounts, groups, permissions, enterprise-wide. All authentication goes to this one central authority.
Sounds simpler to manage.
It is. That's the primary benefit. Easier administration, easier scaling, consistent policy enforcement, one master key managing all locks, sort of. The major vulnerability, though, is it creates a single point of failure. If that central system is compromised or goes offline, the entire organization could be vulnerable or lose access entirely. Makes it a very high-value target for attackers. Requires heavy investment in security and redundancy. In contrast, decentralized access control, or distributed access control, involves multiple entities or systems throughout the network performing authorization. No single choke point. The main benefit is resilience. No single point of failure. If one component is compromised, others might remain secure. Offers more flexibility for diverse needs across different departments. The primary challenge is significantly higher administrative overhead. Much more complex to manage consistency across multiple locations and systems. Changes might need complex replication. More complex, potentially more places for things to go wrong if not managed carefully.
So balancing simplicity with resilience. Okay, the next big one. Single sign-on, SSO. Sounds like a user's dream login once, access everything. How does it work, and what's the big security implication?
SSO is often seen as a dream for users because of its convenience, yeah. And it's a form of centralized access control. It lets a user authenticate once to a central system, and then that single authentication grants them seamless access to multiple independent resources or apps without re-authenticating each time. Click from email to HR portal to project tool, no more passwords.
Definitely convenient. Reduces password fatigue too, I bet.
Absolutely. Users don't need to remember dozens of passwords. This often encourages them to create one very strong password for that single SSO account, knowing it's the only one. For admins, it simplifies user management. However, its very convenience comes with a significant primary disadvantage. If that single central SSO account is compromised, the attacker gets instant access to all associated resources, the keys to the kingdom.
Makes the SSO system a huge target then.
It's exactly a very high-value target. SSO often leverages underlying directory services like LDB, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, pronounced LDAP, basically a central database storing info about users, computers, etc. Microsoft Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS, pronounced ADDEs, is a common LDAP-based example used in SSO. Additionally, PKI, Public Key Infrastructure, pronounced KKI, is frequently used with SSO for secure communication, using digital certificates from a CA, Certificate Authority, pronounced CI, to establish trust and verify identities cryptographically.
That convenience definitely comes with concentrated risk. How about Federated Identity Management, FIM, pronounced FIM? Heard it mentioned with SSO. Sources say it's related. How does it extend SSO across different organizations?
You're right. FAMM is very much related. Think of it as SSO extended across organizational boundaries. While SSO is typically within one organization, VEMA manages identities and credentials when access needs to be shared between multiple independent organizations that don't share a common domain or directory. A federation is basically a partnership where these orgs agree to share identity info and trust each other's authentication. So, if you authenticate in your home organization, those credentials get matched with a federated identity in a partner org, letting you access their resources without a new account or login.
So I can use my work login to access a partner system.
Potentially, yes, if they have a federation agreement. The huge benefit is users don't need new credentials everywhere. Admins manage their own users, but can delegate trusted access to resources in other federated orgs. Streamlines collaboration immensely. FIAM often relies on common standards for exchanging identity info securely, like SAML, Security Assertion Markup Language, pronounced SAML, or OOth, and OpenID Connect, OIDC, pronounced OIDC. These protocols define how identity attributes are exchanged and validated. Our sources also describe different types of federation deployments. Cloud-based federation. A third-party cloud service handles the federated identities and SSO, like online training companies using Cloud SSO, allowing employees to log in with their corporate ID. On-premises federation. The identity management systems are hosted within the org's own network. Acme Inc. manages its own federation internally, allowing access to partner networks. Hybrid federation, a mix of cloud and on-premises. Flexible. For example, if Acme merges with EMCA, EMCA's employees might integrate with Acme's on-prem system while also accessing EMCA's cloud training sites via SSO.
That sounds incredibly powerful for large interconnected businesses. And speaking of efficient access, what exactly is just-in-time JIT provisioning, pronounced JIT? Sounds like manufacturing, but for identity.
It does, and the concept is similar, optimizing for timeliness. Just-in-time provisioning automatically creates the relationship between, say, a user and a new application, precisely when that user needs access for the very first time.
So no waiting for IT to set up the account manually.
Exactly. That's the key benefit. Huge reduction in admin workload. Instead of manually creating accounts and privileges everywhere, JIT automates it. Accounts and permissions are created exactly when needed, no lag, no manual intervention usually needed. How it typically works. When a user tries to log into a third-party app for the first time, the JIT system kicks in. It uses protocols like SAML to securely exchange required user data, username, first name, email, etc., from the employer's network to the third-party provider. This happens securely in the background, authenticating the user and simultaneously creating their account and assigning appropriate privileges in the target app right as they log in.
So no more waiting for IT to set up your accounts before your first day. That's a huge time saver. Okay. And speaking of managing all those logins, what about credential management systems? Are these just fancy password managers or more?
There's certainly more than just fancy password managers, though that's a key component. Credential management systems provide secure storage for usernames and passwords, making it easier and safer to manage sprawling digital identities. Many modern web browsers have adopted the W3C Worldwide Web Consortium, pronounced W3C, Credential Management API, Application Programming Interface, pronounced API. This allows browsers to securely store credentials after login, the Remember Password prompt, offer a credential chooser when you revisit a login form, automatically log you in on subsequent visits if you allow it. Beyond browsers, we have Identity as a Service, IDaaS, pronounced IDaaS. This is a third-party cloud service providing comprehensive identity and access management, essentially cloud-based SSO and integration with SaaS, Software as a Service, pronounced SaaS, like logging into multiple Google apps, Gmail, Docs, Drive after authenticating once, or using an IDaaS for all your Microsoft 365 apps in an enterprise. And then there are dedicated credential manager apps or password vaults. Apps like KeePass are popular examples. Standalone apps storing all your encrypted credentials in a secure database. You only need one strong master password to unlock the vault. They often generate strong passwords, autofill forms, sync across devices. Much safer than reusing passwords or writing them down.
Fascinating how many ways there are to manage credentials. What about scripted access? Sounds like automation, which is usually good, but I have a feeling there's a significant security catch.
You're right to sense a catch. It is automation, but with a very significant caveat. Scripted access uses logon scripts, or batch files, to automate transmitting login credentials to a server or resource. The benefit: it can simulate SSO where true SSO isn't available or feasible, can automate repetitive logins. However, the major risk, and this is a critical red flag, is that these scripts often store credentials in clear text, plain readable text within the script file itself, or a config file.
Oh, that's bad. Very bad.
Extremely vulnerable to theft. If an attacker gets access to where those scripts are stored, they instantly read all the credentials. So while it offers some convenience, it's generally considered very poor security practice. Avoid unless absolutely necessary, and only with extremely strong protections on those script files.
That clear text risk is definitely a massive red flag. Okay, lastly for implementation, we have session management. What exactly is a session in this context, and why is managing it so important?
A session is essentially the period of time a user is actively logged in and interacting with a system or application, your current digital visit. Session management refers to the methods and controls to prevent unauthorized access or hijacking of that session, especially when a user steps away or the session stays open. For desktop PCs, think screensavers that lock after inactivity, requiring a password to unlock. Prevent someone walking by your desk from accessing your open stuff. For online sessions, especially web apps, sessions are managed through unique session identifiers, often in cookies, and automatically terminate after set inactivity periods, your bank website logging you out after 5 minutes. Crucial because if you leave a sensitive site open and walk away, an attacker could potentially use that open session.
Even without the password.
Right. Developers play a key role here, using web development frameworks to implement controls. A unique session identifier is created at the start of an HTTP hypertext transfer protocol request. This identifier must always be protected, encrypted using TLS, transport layer security, pronounced TLEs, to prevent eavesdropping or hijacking. The OWASP, Open Worldwide Application Security Project, pronounced OWASP, a respected resource, provides cheat sheets with recommendations for secure session management. Frameworks include configurable timeout periods. High-value apps, banking, have short timeout, 2 to 5 minutes. Low-value apps, general browsing, might have longer, 15 to 30 minutes. Balance usability with security by ending the session when it's no longer actively used.
We've walked through how identities are established and managed, but it's clearly not static. It's a full life cycle, from joining to leaving. Let's talk about managing the identity and access provisioning lifecycle. What are the key stages, and why is getting each one right so crucial?
This cycle covers the entire journey of an account. Creation, management, review, deletion. It's not just for human users. Applies equally to computer accounts, service accounts, ensuring access is always appropriate and securely managed throughout its existence. Getting it right at every stage is crucial for minimizing risk.
Let's start at the beginning then, provisioning and onboarding. This is when someone new joins, right? Setting up their digital life in the company.
Yes, exactly. The critical process of creating a new user account and giving the new employee exactly the privileges they need for their job needs to be simple, secure, standardized. The enrollment registration process typically involves several key steps. 1. Initial account creation. A new user account is meticulously created. Crucial, it's simple for HR, but secure, following procedures. 2. Identity verification. The new hire's identity is thoroughly verified. Rigorous step reviewing photo IDs, birth certificates, maybe background checks, credit checks, FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, database searches need absolute confidence. 3. Biometric data collection. If using biometrics data, example fingerprints, might be collected and securely stored here. 4. Automated provisioning. Many large orgs automate this, creating usernames consistently, like Susie Hones, automatically assigning baseline privileges based on department or role. Reduces errors, speeds things up. 5. Hardware provisioning. Issuing necessary company hardware laptops, mobiles, authenticator smart cards need accurate tracking. Our sources also highlight key onboarding items crucial for a secure start. Signing the Acceptable Use Policy, AUP, sets expectations. Educating on security best practices, avoiding malware, phishing. Reviewing mobile device policy, ensuring the computer is fully operational. Security software included. Helping configure a password manager for good hygiene. Assisting with 2FA configuration, reinforces layered security, explaining how to get help desk support, showing how to properly access, share, save resources according to policy.
That's an incredibly comprehensive checklist for onboarding. Really highlights how much goes into setting someone up securely, what happens at the other end, deprovisioning and offboarding. I imagine this is just as critical, maybe even more so.
Absolutely critical, and sadly, often where orgs fall short, leading to significant preventable risks. Deprovisioning and offboarding is the essential process of disabling or deleting an account and reclaiming hardware when an employee leaves, or even transfers, often called account revocation.
Why is it so critical?
Failure to properly deprovision is a major vulnerability. If an employee leaves but their accounts aren't immediately disabled, they can still log in, cause malicious activity, encrypt data, delete files, steal info. Our sources give a stark example. The University of Wisconsin failed to terminate health insurance premiums for 924 ex-employees, costing $8 million, all due to inadequate deprovisioning.
Wow, $8 million. That's a big hit.
Huge. The typical process includes 1. Immediate account action. Disable or delete the user's account in all relevant systems. Supervisors review data what to retain, archive, delete, encrypt before removal. 2. Password changes. Any shared accounts or linked accounts need passwords changed. Admins might log in as the former employee, with oversight, to handle data before changing the password and deleting the account, often within 30-90 days. 3. Log activity. Vital to log all activity under the terminated employee's name, especially around departure. Creates an audit trail. 4. Hardware collection. Collect all company-issued hardware laptops, mobiles, tokens, smart cards. Prevent assets walking out the door. And similar processes apply when an employee transfers departments. Old privileges revoked, new ones provisioned. Prevents excessive access.
So just as important to exit gracefully as to onboard properly seems like a common theme. The sources then talk about role definition and transition. Sounds like this happens during an employee's time as their career evolves.
Exactly. Dynamically managing privileges as responsibilities change. Crucial, ongoing part of the life cycle. Ensures rights remain appropriate. The process involves two main components. 1. Role definition. Org needs to clearly define all roles and the specific privileges associated with each, often mapped to groups in the system. A marketing specialist role has access to marketing software, specific drives, maybe read-only access to customer DBs. 2. Transition management. When an employee moves roles, their group membership is modified. Automatically changes access rights, lose old privileges, gain only necessary new ones. Example from sources. Org hires a Linux admin. Need to define new roles with specific privileges for them, root access on certain machines, permission to deploy apps, access logs. When someone moves into that role, their access transitions, old permissions revoke. Rigorously follows least privilege.
And finally, account maintenance and account access review. This sounds like the ongoing hygiene, right? Regular checkups.
Precisely that continuous ongoing hygiene. Account maintenance is a continuous process of managing rights, preventing unauthorized changes, ensuring accounts accurately reflect current needs and policies. A crucial component is the account access review. Admins periodically review accounts, user, privileged system, service accounts to ensure they don't have excessive privileges and comply with policies.
And what are the big risks here? Excessive privilege.
Right. Two common dangers that creep in. Excessive privilege. Users having more privileges than their job requires. A data entry clerk able to modify server configs. Big problem. Privilege creep. A user account gradually accumulating more privileges over time. Happens as roles change, new tasks assigned, but old permissions are never revoked. Silent accumulation of risk. Example. Karen in accounting transfers to sales. If her accounting privileges aren't revoked and she just gets new sales privileges, she now has both. That's privilege creep. Violates least privilege, only have minimum access needed now. Regular access reviews are essential to catch and fix these issues.
So at the end of the day, it's about making sure access rights are always just enough, but never too much for what's needed right now.
Precisely. Maintaining that delicate balance, dynamically adapting access as roles evolve, constantly revalidating the who, what, why of every permission. It's a continuous, never-ending process.
Wow, that was a truly comprehensive deep dive into identity and authentication. We've covered so much, from foundations to modern implementations. Let's quickly recap some of the most important nuggets we've extracted.
We began by understanding that IAM, Identity and Access Management, is really about controlling who accesses what assets, information, systems, devices, facilities, applications, services. We looked at how physical and logical controls must work together, all aimed at upholding that crucial CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability, the bedrock.
Then we broke down the foundational AAA model: authentication, proving who you are; authorization, what you can do; and accounting, tracking what you did. We saw how identification is claiming an identity, authentication is proving it, and explored the essential subject-object relationship and access control. That active-passive dynamic really helps.
We dove deep into establishing identity registration, proofing during onboarding, including the surprising risks of KBA, knowledge-based authentication. Then we spent significant time on the three main authentication factors: something you know, passwords, weaknesses, policies, and those interesting NIST versus PCI DSS recommendations; something you have, smart cards, hardware, software authenticators like TOTP and HOTP; and something you are, biometrics like fingerprints, face scans, measuring accuracy with FR, FAR, and SEER, understanding that trade-off.
And we didn't stop there. We explored advanced concepts like location-based, somewhere you aren't, context-aware authentication, and the absolutely critical importance of MFA, multi-factor authentication, noting NIST's deprecation of SMS for 2FA. We also touched on the growing trend of passwordless authentication with FIDO and passkeys,
Yeah.
moving beyond passwords.
Finally, we covered broader implementation strategies, centralized versus decentralized access control, simplicity versus resilience, the convenience and risks of SSO, single sign-on, the complexities and benefits of FIM, federated identity management across orgs, the efficiency of JIT, just-in-time provisioning, credential management systems, the danger of scripted access with clear text creds, and the importance of solid session management.
And we wrapped it up with the full identity and access provisioning lifecycle, from onboarding new employees to the vital process of deprovisioning when they leave, managing role definitions and transitions, and the ongoing need for account maintenance and regular access reviews to combat excessive privilege and privilege creep, always enforcing least privilege. What stands out to you from today's deep dive? It's clear managing identity and authentication is dynamic, multifaceted. Not just setting up a login, it's continuous, layered trust and access everywhere.
This really raises an important question for all of us, I think. In this increasingly interconnected world where our digital identities constantly expand across more platforms and services, how can we ensure the systems designed to protect us remain robust and adaptable to new threats, especially as the very concepts of identity and authentication themselves keep evolving?
A powerful thought to mull over as we navigate this digital age. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into identity and authentication. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning,